Hi, and welcome to Six Figure Signature Offers, the podcast for women in business who want to create brands that become the hot tamale of their industry and sold out scalable offers that bring home the bacon without burning them out. I'm your host, online business strategist Robin Birkin. I've gone from managing 8-figure marketing budgets and big teams to creating 2 multi-six-figure businesses in part-time hours by design. If you're ready to attract Cloud9 clients in droves, sell out your scalable offers, and not bring your laptop to the beach, then welcome, let's go. Hi, so fun fact, I recorded this episode yesterday and completely forgot to hit the record button. So here we are today, recording it for the second time. I can tell you right now, because I've already recorded it once before, it's a good one. So I hope you tune in for this full episode. Let me give you the rundown. I'm going to speak about the core metrics you need to look at. I am going to look at how soon you're going to do a debrief, how I plan for my future launches, and at the end of this episode, I'm also going to share with you the few things that nobody plans for, and this is one of the core, or these are the core reasons why so many people fail to really grow their launches, launch on launch, or stay stagnant or go backwards, right? So follow for more tips on how to record podcast episodes. Step number 1 is actually hit record. So I am excited to dive in with you today on all things how to turn every launch debrief into your next record-breaking launch. So let's dive in. Now, the very first question is, how soon would you typically do a debrief after your live launch? And what I would say is I typically will do my full debrief about 1 to 2 weeks after my launch for a couple of reasons. Number 1, sometimes as soon as I've closed the doors, especially if it's more of a high volume launch. So in my last business, and I refer to my last business all of the time because it was an online course, it was like $397 to $497. At one point, it was $697, but it lent itself to a high volume. Where now I predominantly work in the Peace and Profit Mastermind, and I would probably work with 30 to 40 women per year. It's not a high number of women. If I was doing quarterly launches, that might mean 10 people per launch. But one of the things that we do inside the mastermind is we also invite women to renew. And the figures for our renewals vary, but sometimes they've been, at like 90% of women renewing. So therefore, sometimes when I'm doing launches, my intakes are very low for that because of the way that I have now structured my scalable business. So I will often refer to my last business in life coaching when I had a much lower priced product and it was very direct to cart. So when I look at that business and I was launching fairly consistently to about 45 to 50 people per launch, we would typically have a couple of people in, let's say, the 48 hours to 3 days after the launch. We might still be having conversations, or they might have just, because of the different time zone, joined the launch late. So if you go ahead and you do a launch debrief straight away, then you're potentially not going to be getting all of the data. And also, just as a side note, when you are live launching, particularly if you have something that is a little bit higher in volume, you do want to consider that in the immediate sort of 48 hours after a launch, you may still have people who want to join your program. So something to flag and keep an eye on in terms of whether you shut down the sales page straight away, whether you close the doors and then write something different before you go back to the wait list to sort of say, look, have a conversation with us. We've just closed the doors. However you want to do this. Sometimes you might feel really, really tired after a launch. Sometimes you might have had other things that have fallen by the wayside a little bit that you need to catch up on. Maybe it's your accounting, whatever. And sometimes you might feel like you're just running on adrenaline, whatever that might be. But I usually like to let the dust settle just a little bit And I will go forth and get my team and myself to do the launch debrief about 1 to 2 weeks out from the launch. So then when I am doing my debrief for the live launch, what are the core metrics that I'm really looking at? So there's 2 big questions that I'm going to start by asking myself after a live launch. Obviously, the first question, I'll have obviously set my revenue goals. The first question is, did I meet my revenue goals? What did that look like? Was it like a shit show? Did it go unimaginably well? What, did that look like in terms of the overall goal? Because if you meet your goal, you definitely do want to track all of the results and have a full review, because that's how you then have the next record-breaking launch. But really, the only goal that matters is, did I meet my goal or not of the revenue / number of people I wanted to intake into the program? So the most important metric is always the most important metric. And I hope that you really take that on board, because even things like Facebook ads, yes, there is data you can take from Facebook ads when you're running campaigns, but at the end of the day, if you have a goal cost per lead, then really that sometimes and you're at or massively getting great results, then you almost don't want to be overanalyzing the cost per lead, the cost per thousand, the click-through rate, all of these things, because actually you met your goals. So you've probably got other things in your business that are far more important. So if you're meeting the goal in one area, then you don't want to be overanalyzing everything else. So then the next thing that I will look at is what was the one constraint? What was the one thing inside this launch? And so if you think of pipes, for example, we're in the midst of the renovation and my husband has spent, I just cannot tell you how many hours redoing the full pipes and reticulation to this house. If you have been through a renovation, you'll know what I feel like in this moment is that you start a renovation, you have an expectation of the work that needs to be done, and then it's just one shit show after the next of discovering that your house has super old pipes that has all these leaks in it. We found out the electricity to the house, all of the wiring, there was oh my God, I can't even talk about it. All of the wiring had issues. The mains water pipe to the house was not the right width, so we had to get the full mains water pipe. All of the stuff has needed to be redone on this house. Major. Anyway, let's say you have water pipes and the water pipe somewhere has a bit of a blockage, right? Whether it's a full blockage or whether it's a partial blockage, it's obviously the point at which the water is constrained. So looking at your funnel and your launch, was there one particular area that was a major constraint that if you unblocked that area, you would get so many more sales because it flows on from this to this to this to this. So maybe the number one thing that let you down in your launch was your webinar show up rate. Maybe you're oh my God, of the people who attended my webinar, I had a 10% conversion rate, but I had a really low show up rate. Therefore, the biggest constraint you had, if I could just get all of the people who had signed up to my webinar to actually show up live, then I might have made, for example, double the sales. Let's say you had a 10% show up rate. If you had a 20%, 30%, 40% show up rate to that webinar, you might have made, let's say you made 10 sales, you might have made 20 sales, 30 sales, 40 sales. So then when you go into your next launch, you can be so dialed in on what that one constraint was and can start to consider your choices on, okay, well, if the number one constraint I had was webinar show up rates, what do I need to do differently in order to unblock that pipe in my funnel? Do I need to really shift the live show up bonus that I give? Do I cancel replays and not give replays? Or do I optimize for replays and then put my replay on my podcast? Do I run more webinars? So you can really look at like, what do I need to do here? There is so much that you can do in any different area, but if looking at just the one constraint can be so effective, right? And then the next thing that I would typically say is, was this a moneymaker? And so I don't mean by this, did this make you money? But in your business, you have things that are your moneymakers. You have offers that are your moneymakers. You have activities and tasks in your business that are your money makers. So I would be looking at, was this one of the money makers in my business? So you would typically have only one or two in each category. You would have in your business 1 to 2 things that are money-making activities. So let me give you a really good example. I have a client, Jess. She is a phenomenal systems expert. She will go into businesses that are making, sort of like $10 million a year, and she goes in and consults to them. She creates, delivers her unique proprietary frameworks. Those frameworks increase their compliance, help them run their business more efficiently, help them see their profit and loss in ways that they've never been able to see it before. And those frameworks that she delivers helps them get from $10 million to $20 million in their businesses. So this is what she does. So we were on a one-to-one call just recently, and we were arguably looking at what are her money makers. And she was like, do I, go on Instagram? Do I start posting on Instagram? What do I do here? And so in terms of activity, so number one, in terms of offers, her best moneymaker offer isn't like a $500 online course. It's selling her frameworks for multiple 5 figures. So in terms of money-making offers, was this, let's say that it was a $500 online course. Was this a moneymaker? Not really. Then we look like, what are her money-making activities? Just to continue on this path a little bit further, her money-making activities might be building networks and connections, and her money-making activity might be based more on LinkedIn rather than Instagram. So you will have in your business money-making offers and money-making activities. And so I would typically ask myself, after a live launch, was this a moneymaker? Or did I get distracted, go on a side quest, and decide to launch something that actually maybe I thought that it was going to lead into my premium product. It didn't, and it didn't generate me very much revenue. So I'm going to look at that and be like, really, it wasn't a moneymaker, it was a distraction. So asking yourself that question first. So then in terms of the core metrics that I would look at the start of a launch, so again, we obviously want to look at like, what are the money makers? What are going to be the absolute money-making activities in this launch? And this is why it's so important for you to have a sales and demand strategy in your business. So what you might have within that is a few of your core success metrics. So for us in the mastermind, we have a figure each month because we have moved to more of a rolling monthly intake, which I'm obsessed with. And so we have core metrics for the number of people who join our email list, the number of people who join our wait list, the number of people who apply, and the number of people who join. Like breaking it down to the most basic level, this is what I want to achieve every month in order to get the number of sales that I require. So you might be looking at, well, how many leads do I need per day? Let's say you've got a webinar funnel. How many leads do I need per day? Then I might look at, well, what is my ad spend and the cost per lead in relation to my goal cost per lead? Maybe you obviously want to look at sales. And maybe the other thing that is like a core success metric. So this is going to be an important figure that if I don't get anywhere near this figure, I know that my launch is not going to go well. That could be the number of people who register for your conversion event. If this is like the third time that you've run this launch, you may have some core success metrics based on your last launch and the biggest constraint or the biggest constraints in the last launch, right? So ideally, going into the launch, you will have an idea of benchmarks and you will have an idea of some of the core numbers that you want to hit in order to facilitate the number of sales and the revenue that you want in your launch. Now, you're not going to then just play out the launch the way you thought the launch was going to go and then 2 weeks later have a post-mortem and say to yourself, oh, look, this didn't go very well. Okay, fine, whatever. You're going to be, if you have a revenue goal figure that you want to make and you are here and ready to get, those revenue goals, you are going to mid-launch, if you said that you wanted 1,000 webinar leads and you're halfway through the lead up to your webinar and you only have 100 webinar leads, it's time to then think about, hang on, what do I need to add, do differently, change, tweak, do to pivot in order to reach those revenue goals? Do you need to post more? Do you need to add to your ads budget? Do you need to change the messaging and the positioning that you have? Do you need to add more live events? Do you need to be seeking out collaborations with other people? What do you need to do? Do not wait till the launch is fully done and dead and then go, oh no, now I have no money. So if you want to reach your revenue goals, pull a finger out and get going. And you should have, prior to your launch, set some goals for what you wanted to achieve. So when I'm then going through the launch debrief, I'm going to go right through all of the data. I'm going to start with my core success metrics. What are the core top line figures? Obviously, how many sales did I make? Were they payment plan or pay in full? And I'm going to look at that because if everybody paid in full, that's potentially a sign for me that I may want to sweeten the deal on my payment plan a little bit. But if everyone paid on the payment plan, of course I love recurring revenue, but that's then potentially not going to give me enough money to reinvest into the next campaign. So, I love a good 50-50 split between the two, or if you want 75% pay in full or 75 of either and 25 of the other, that's fine too. But we don't necessarily want 100 and 100. Well, I don't think you do anyway. So then I'm going to look at my conversion rate. How many people were in my launch lead up to what percentage of people joined my program. So everybody, I find, literally everybody, calculates conversion rates differently. This is how I calculate conversion rates. I will look at how many people basically joined my conversion event and the lead magnet that I was running. If I was running a lead magnet in the immediate lead up to that launch, how many people got swept up in this launch? If you are running your launch and you had a lot of people sign up for your lead magnet but never then go into your webinar, I do have the mindset that your webinar should not be something that people have to consume in order to buy from your launch. However, I do find that the conversion event is a really good representation of what the final conversion rate of your launch will be. I don't use sales page. I think if you are looking at the organic figures of your sales page, that is perfectly fine. But if you're running ads, especially if you're running traffic ads to a sales page, the figures are going to skew. So I would never use that. And then in terms of looking at your email list, I never look at the full email list. It's always my view that you want to have about 20% of your existing email list, if you clean it regularly, to opt into your launch sphere. So I will look at the conversion rate for the launch, and ideally I want that to be between 2 and 5% of the total sales. If I have a wait list, I'm aiming for about 10% of the wait list to join the launch. So then I will look at the conversion event, and I find, as I've said, the conversion event to be absolutely pivotal in terms of being able to see whether or not your launch was successful. I'm going to look at the registrations, the show up rate, the drop off rate of the webinar. Was there a particular point that I just lost them? Or did I bury the lead somewhere? What did that look like? And I'm going to look at emails. So obviously I will look at open and click rates. I look at open rates a little less these days, unless the open rates are absolutely abysmal, like 10%. That's a major issue. But for most people, they hover between 30 and 50%. And I'll be like, yep, cool, that's fine. And I will look at click rates as well. But at the end of the day, the thing that really matters is how many people purchased. I will look at ad spend. I will look at cost per lead. I will look at which of my ads were the best performing ads, and circling back to emails, which of my emails seemed to really hit a nerve. And I will look at my emails in the context of, was it the emails that were really direct about what I was doing? So literally, I heard the phrase the other day is sometimes you just need a sign that says horse for sale. And when I am doing a launch, I will aim for up to 50% of the emails that I'm sending to almost be like horse for sale emails. I have the viewpoint that even if someone doesn't open my emails, they should be able to follow along with the narrative of the launch. So doors are open. This is the early bird expiring. This is the doors are closing in 48 hours. Like if someone just read through the titles of my email, they would know my program is open. This is the milestones of my launch. So up to 50% of my emails are what I would call, I guess, horse for sale emails. And then the other 50% are speaking to, more curiosity driven or outcome driven emails. Then when I look at that, and especially if I compare that to other launches, I might be looking at, for my audience, what seems to be resonating more. Is it immediate desire points or long-term desire points? Is it pain points or is it desire points? So I'll sort of look at that in the context of, what is my audience really loving right now? And what did they not love? I will also look at organic versus paid leads. I will look at, okay, well, what did it look like for us to, on Instagram versus what did it look like for us in the podcast, etc. And then the other thing that I would do is a full client drill down. So even when we were attracting 50 people in each launch, I would always do a full client drill down, or I would get my virtual assistant to do it. And here's some of the things that I'll be looking at. I will look at, what was the opt-in that they first came from? So I, very much so with the mastermind, I am looking at, when did they first come into my email list? And I will be looking at, how did they come into my email list? I really want to know this, because you might have a lead magnet that is getting 80 cents per lead, amazing, but actually doesn't lend itself to any clients. No one signs up from that. Or I might have a lead magnet that I pay, $15 cost per lead and has a really high conversion rate into my offer. Let's say like 20%. I would, depending on the investment in your offer, you might find that paying $15 per lead produces a much lower cost per acquisition for getting clients. Okay, so you want to do a full client drill down, and you also want to know, what is the average runway, right? What is the average amount of time that it is taking people to go from joining my email list to signing up? And a really interesting point is that we had a launch in my life coaching business, and it was kind of one of the last launches, when something ridiculous, like some massive percentage, like 75% of people had only been on my email list for the last 90 days. And so it's a really interesting figure. It is also a really great indication to you that wherever you are right now in your business, things can change for you so rapidly, I promise. So wherever you are right now, you just need to get started and get going, and things can be so radically different. But that's really interesting. So when you start to learn what are the things that have moved the needle for this person? Are there common denominators in terms of, like you've looked at the click rates, for example? Well, let's say I only had 5 people join my program, but all 5 of those people had clicked and purchased from the one email. Then I'm like, that's my gold email, right? That's my golden goose email. So I'm going to look and go through just a full client drill down, and I take my time with this. I want to know everything. I want to know what they've been opening, what they've been clicking, what's going on. And the software that I use is Kartra that allows me to do all of that. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to take my time and care, really diving deep into each person who bought and their behavior. So then the next thing that I will do is I will start planning for my next launch immediately. There's a couple of things, and so that a lot of people don't do when they close out a launch. So a lot of you will be listening to this being like, yeah, man, I do a spreadsheet. Yes. However, do you also then go through and in that moment when it's all fresh in your mind, even if it's just roughly, start to plan for the next launch? Do you go and put the dates in? Do you go and say, okay, well, what worked well for this launch? What didn't work well? And what am I going to do next time? Because when you get 4, 5, 6 months down the line, it may not be as fresh in your mind. What felt exhausting? What felt energizing? Where did I get good traction and have good conversations? What was the flavor of the conversations that I had? Did I have, let's say, for example, I'm a weight loss coach and I have gone through, I've had like an 8-week, accelerator program that I'm taking everyone through. And I had conversations with people in my audience, or I looked at my webinar and all of the things that people asked me at the end of the webinar in the FAQs. And I had so many people tell me they're busy executives and they don't have the time to meal prep and spend hours at the gym. And I was like, interesting. And that would only be fresh in my mind if I did this in the process of my last launch. And you would know, like I know that if you are like any other normal human being or anyone else who I work with, so many of us have the best intentions. We're like, yeah, I'm gonna plan out my launch. I'm gonna plan my pre-launch. I'm gonna get onto content. I'm gonna do that. And then inevitably it just comes around so freaking quickly. And you're like, oh my God, and I've run out of time for pre-launch. Well, the way to not do that is to possibly at least get some things started and going. Plan out your goals. What do I want to achieve? What worked well? What were the objections or questions that I had? What can I rinse and repeat out of that launch versus what do I want to throw in the bin and never ever do again? Okay. And looking at that feedback, you then have the opportunity to say, is there something that I need to communicate in my sales page about this? Or you can say to yourself, you know what? There was a lot of feedback from people who think they're really busy. So what is happening in that is that all of these people are rolling down my sales page and inevitably thinking, I'm too busy for that. Like, ain't nobody got time for that. And so therefore, I'm going to create a bonus. And actually, you know what? I'm going to create 2. One of those is like a 5-minute workout series. Maybe it's just delivered in a PDF with some photos of like when you're at your desk, here's how you can burn, 3,000 kilojoules in just little 5-minute sprints around your high executive job. Or maybe I call it exercise for executives. The busy executive's guide to fitting in exercise around your busy and high performance schedule. Amazing. And then maybe the other thing that I do, because I'm like, they all think they're too busy, right? They're too busy for this. Maybe the other thing that I do is I put together a meal plan that is something like 5 minutes or less, 101 recipes that you can make in 5 minutes or less. so that you are not sacrificing your goals and do not need to meal prep ever. So instantly, if they then, in the next launch, right, maybe they were considering your program the first time, in the next launch, when you launch, they're going to be like, oh my God, I need this program because she has specifically created it for me. It's going to stand out because in comparison to all of the other expert programs out there, she's designed this for high performance executives just like me. Then the next thing that you're going to do as part of that post-launch debrief is you are going to have a look at who were these people who were warm, who were showing up to my webinar, who were having conversations, who were asking me questions, who were reading all of my Instagram stories. And you are going to note them down and be a good human being and foster human connection without expectation, right? You're not going into this with ulterior motives, like I just need them to buy. What would it look like to be like, you know what? They have gone out of their way to start fostering a relationship and community with me. They are being a villager in my village, so I am going to be a villager as well. And just being generally lovely to that person. If they reply to your Instagram story, you reply back. If they ask a question on your Instagram profile, you make sure that you answer them back either publicly or privately, that you say, hey, I just wanted to say I see you always cheerleading me and I really appreciate you. You're going to be a generally great human being building a relationship with that person. And most human beings just want to feel seen and heard. They want to feel valued. And if they are actively showing you that they are interested in what you have to say, you are going to reciprocate as a human being. And I know we're all busy, but this is one of the highest return on investment activities you could probably do, right? And if you ignore all that and get busy and go about your business, blah, 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 and then forget about it right up until the next launch, well, then you have not had the time to fully foster and nurture that relationship. So this is why we do it as part of closing out the last launch, right? So then the next thing that you are going to do, and this is another thing that nobody does. I've got two. So, the number one thing is they do not nurture relationships with the warmest people from the last launch. The number two is that they don't go through that core feedback and ask what they might need to tweak or change in the sales page or in terms of their bonus suite. Number three is they forget pre-launch and just goes right out of their head. They don't do it in the moment when things are fresh, when all of that feedback is fresh, so then you can work that into the new content or the angles for your conversion events. They don't do any of that. The next thing that they don't do is copy and paste out the best performing resources and the ideas and everything that is fresh in their mind into a Notion or Asana board. When you have systems like this is how you scale your launches, because inside a launch, that's fine if it's the first couple of launches and you're in this space of just building the assets. But outside of that, you should not be scrambling every single launch to write emails from scratch, to write social media posts from scratch. You should be building up a bank of rinse and repeat resources that you can take with a bit of feedback when you're doing the launch debrief, and then have it all systemized into a folder so that come the next launch, you are so organized with the flow of exactly how your launch is going to go and your future launches. This is how you scale your launches. And then the very last thing, the thing that is almost one of the most important things, and this is why people's launches do not become record-breaking next launches. You spend all the money between this launch and the next. And then when I don't care if who it is, I've seen launch debriefs from $1 million businesses, so many businesses. Facebook ads are going to account for 70 to 80% of the leads that you get in through a launch. If you spend all of the money, then how will you fund the ads for the next launch? So if you do the launch debrief and if you reverse engineer your goals, you should already know how much you intend to spend on Facebook ads, and you can put that aside, or even the majority of it aside. When you say that you want to double your next launch, but you have not put aside the resources to allow you to do that, it becomes very hard to do that without significantly increasing your organic output. So when you close out a launch, you need to look at those revenue figures. And if you're like, yeah, but I need that money for my other expenses and for my payroll and this and that, then you have a choice. You can either be really realistic with then what the next launch looks like, or you now know that actually maybe I'm going to come off this launch and then I might sell in some one-to-one places or whatever that looks like in order to be able to fund the ads that are going to allow me to scale in the next launch. But you have an idea. You know how much you want to spend and what your expectations are. So that is how these things, especially like the end of this episode, that is how you turn every launch debrief into your next record-breaking launch. And this is the kind of work we do with women inside the Peace and Profit Mastermind. We go into the nitty-gritty. We have a look at the constraints. We have a look at what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change. We look at how do we pivot in mid-launch? What do we need to do so that we can stay on track and keep doing better and better in our launches, and heaven forbid, definitely not going backwards. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want any more, please make sure you come and follow me on Instagram at Robin Birkin if you would like to hear more daily content and tidbits. And I hope you're subscribed to the podcast because I cannot wait to catch you next week. Bye for now.